Hey y'all, today's guest is Rob Feulner. Rob is the marketing coordinator at Duplication.com. Yes, the one and only Duplication.com. If you are at all involved in tapes, you definitely know what it is. And if you're not involved, it is what the name says it is. It's Duplication. They make cassette tapes for some of the smallest projects, like the Rue Defense Tape Club, to the biggest projects that have like tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of copies pressed. So they really do it all. This was a conversation that was a lot of fun for me, and it focused a lot on noise music, which I don't know anything about, but I learned a ton and I really enjoyed this conversation. As always, if you want to keep up with what we're doing, you can do so at tapeclub.substack.com. All right, here's my conversation with Rob. Rob Feulner, thank you for coming on the show. I'm pumped to have someone from Duplication.com because first of all, it's a mainstay in cassette culture and in musician culture. I've been using Duplication.com in some way or another for over a decade for sure. So yeah, thank you for coming on the show. Pumped to have you.
Well, thanks for having me, man. Love to talk about cassettes.
Yes, so cassettes and so much more. I mean, you said you're in Montreal, which it'll make its way into the conversation at some point, I'm sure. We won't force it. But I do want to say, if you are a musician who makes cassettes, CDs, anything, you're probably very familiar with Duplication.com. Tell me a bit about how you got involved with them over there.
Myself personally, I was releasing cassettes in 2008. I had a local noise label called They Live We Sleep. And at that time in my life, I was doing video game testing, which sounds like it could be fun, but it was it's a minimum wage job, of which Montreal has a ton of video game companies and stuff like that. And kind of mind numbing. And all I was really thinking about during work was just like noisy stuff, cassettes, how J cards are going to fold when I get home, that sort of thing. I put in an order for some blank tapes. I went to go pick it up and I was like, I'm going to charm my way into a job. And I kind of did. I sort of I got a tour and everything. And 6 months later, I got a call back and I started doing audio mastering for audio cassettes, CD duplication, CD printing. I was doing so much stuff. And eventually that job turned into marketing. So that was, working from the Montreal office, Nuns Island, that was great. Now I'm working remote. All our production's happening in Toronto and most recently Ohio as well. So I've just seen the company grow and change in so many awesome ways, and just the whole time, just more and more tapes being duplicated.
That's so funny that you went in there and were basically can I get a job? Which is what the advice that every, older person gives younger people now. And younger people are just it doesn't work that way anymore. It did in 2008, I guess. It kind of worked that way.
It kind of worked. Yeah, it took some time. But I do an art practice too, right? And I think that every, not every opportunity, but most opportunities I've had is just because I just flat out ask, can I do this? And sometimes they're yeah. And 95% of them are no, or just don't respond to an email, or just walk away from me or whatever. But it doesn't really hurt to ask. They don't know who you are anyway. So
yeah, if you don't ask, you don't receive. And also, it's never personal. It's they just sometimes just don't need your help at that time. But I think, you probably were one of correct me if I'm wrong, but I assume you were one of very few people who were trying to get your foot in the door at a cassette duplication plant, basically. Or was the cassette scene big in Montreal in that time?
Well, it was actually kind of big when it comes to experimental and punk and stuff like that. If you had a little, a scummy band, by that I mean just a garage rocks, scuzzy sound or whatever, you were, if not releasing cassettes, the other bands you were playing with were releasing cassettes or had some on the merch table. At that time, it was mostly duplicating at home, just DIY style, really crazy packaging and stuff. So when I started working there, I realized I actually know some people who already work there. I was surprised to see them there. But yeah, it was definitely a scene. And and I'm going to talk about this more with the mixtape and stuff, because that's not, not to spoil it, but that's a little bit part of the theme. There was a really incredible drone scene happening in Montreal. Earlier than that, there was a good noise scene. It all kind of changes and goes to permutations and stuff like that. But, Montreal was oddly enough, a big cassette city in the underground.
Well, that kind of checks out because I feel like Montreal, I don't know what it is about it. You obviously have a much better take on this than I do, and correct me again if I'm wrong here, but I imagine that Montreal is like, it just attracts artists from all over because the type of things that like musically, for example, go on in Montreal, at least that make it out to me, are things like, you know, you mentioned like the noise stuff and the punk stuff, but then like the more like weird angular like stuff like aught and stuff like that.
Sure.
Or like even like jazz stuff. The first time I ever went to Montreal as a kid was in the summer for Jazz Fest. And I was like, this shit is incredible. And I've been back, I think like 3 times, but it's never like straight ahead what you're getting out of there. It's always kind of got some sort of art tinge to it. Does that sound right? Or am I off base? Am I just missing the pop?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, like, you know, stuff like legacy, like, labels like Constellation Records and Arbutus, and like, you know, we have that movie Mild and Kicks coming out this summer. That is like, everybody in Montreal is talking about it because it's like about the 2012 indie scene from sort of a Toronto perspective. But I think that does capture something. I haven't seen it yet. That Montreal was known for cheap living. If you were like a 20-year-old in Toronto, you could retire in Montreal practically because, like, you know, your rent was half the cost. Everything was just, you know, just affordable. You could work part-time and be a musician, or you can like not work at all and be a musician and just kind of be living in squalor, but you'd be living. Whereas that's changed, you know, like everywhere else in North America, that, you know, everything's been gentrified to hell and back. But it was like an artist paradise for that reason alone. Whereas if you go to Toronto, like, there's kind of like, there'll be shows happening during the week, but people are tired. They're going to bed early. On the weekend, they might party and stuff like that. But, you know, it's just not as vibrant, in a sense, or at least it wasn't. You know, I think now we're at even keel.
The bagels are nowhere near as good either, right? It's Montreal is the bagel capital, you know. I have
a freezer full of St. Viateur bagels right now that I picked up yesterday, and I was literally just thinking about them right before the record. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have one of those.
That's it. And there's also this one guy back in the day, like maybe 10 years ago, there was a guy who made little gnocchis. He had like a little gnocchi spot down there somewhere, and he sold them out of like some little tiny shop that he had. And I stayed at Airbnb that he happened to own. He was like, come downstairs, I'll give you a gnocchi. I was like, all right, let's do it. Yeah, Montreal, a beautiful place. And like you said, vibrant for sure. And, you know, I guess attracts artists of all stripes. When it comes to the cassette environment, right? So cassette culture in generally is a pretty niche thing. And I imagine that the world that duplication.com works in is also somewhat niche, or at least very specialized, the ecosystem of, you know, duplication, right? Tell me a little bit about the ecosystem and some of the players and partners involved in it.
Okay, yeah, sure. I just want to, like, the idea of it being niche, I'm not sure how true that is anymore, because it's as niche as, like, Bandcamp is niche. If you have a Bandcamp page that you're selling merch, I think there's a good chance that you're selling cassettes, or at least like very aware of like the cassette that is an option for you.
I will say though, I think for us, we may be a little biased, right? Like we're in this world for so long. But you know, you know how people have that concept of like work friends or coworker music or whatever, like where they're like, oh, that's coworker music or whatever. Like, what do I put in the car when I'm on a long drive with my coworkers? Oh, put on Tame Impala. Like everyone will like it. But for me, every coworker or, you know, person I've worked with, I've ever told that I like make music and it goes out on cassettes, they're like,
that's true.
What? Is this a joke? Like, what are you talking about? You're like, no, like there's actually a thriving scene. And they're like, there's not a thriving scene. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe there is not a thriving scene. To me, it's thriving and I love it. But tell me, about the ecosystem for duplication. You know, it's massive, right? Big enough that there are multiple players involved, but still there's probably only a handful of players, right?
Sure. Well, when you say the ecosystem, do you mean the artists and labels, or are you talking about like the work production side?
I'm talking work and production. I think that, and then we'll get into artists and labels.
Sure.
You know, because that's innumerable. I think there's so many of those. But like in terms of the production, I feel like there's y'all. There's isn't A to Z, who we had a guest on last season or a couple seasons ago. And those are kind of the only two I could think of. I'm sure there's many more, but and I'm sure there's y'all's processes kind of overlap at some points, right? There's only so many people involved in the game that you can go to globally, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like, so there are a few. A to Z Media is like, we work with them. They're a broker that, they supply cassettes, vinyl, CDs, everything for people. And we're one of the many suppliers that they use. And, we love working with them for cassettes. Then there's A to Z Audio, which is a separate company. And they've been around, I think, for 40 years now. And we actually, they were selling the company a few years ago. So we bought the company. We're working with, people who have been working with A to Z Audio for decades. So that's the Ohio plant, is duplication.com/A to Z Audio. There's another one in, Missouri named National Audio Company. That's a well-known, company. And then there's a lot of, smaller players who, Cryptic Carousel in New York, Corey Bauer. We work with him too. He's a wonderful dude. And there's small players as well who kind of like do more like bedroom duplication, stuff like that. And we work with a lot of those people. Like we supply to artists and labels directly, bedroom artists, indie labels, mid-sized labels, and then majors. But we also work with companies. We're just, it's an open, like, equal playing field for us.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's almost like this kind of goes back to what I meant when I said niche. Like, it's a small world. Like, all the players who are involved know of each other. Like, even me, like, I'm such a nobody in the whole thing. But like, when you name those names, like NAC and Cryptic Carousel, it's like I was like, oh yeah, I've heard of those before. Like, so it's, if you're in it even a little bit, of all these names. I'm curious, what is like a big picture kind of supply chain? What does it look like for cassettes? Like, because it seems like you guys are involved, you mentioned, with a lot of these partners, but what is like the life of a cassette? How does it start, and what steps does it go through to get created?
Yeah. Okay. So you are an artist. You have your album ready. You have some tracks. You place an order. You got our templates. You upload the files. Everything is kind of done on your end, and now it's our responsibility, right? So the first thing we would be doing is loading the tapes to your audio file length, like the longest length. So if side A is 22 minutes and side B is 20 minutes, it would be 22 minutes per side. So we have our massive stock of Faro tape. We recently found some old stock of chrome tape, which is like no longer being produced in the world. So it's kind of a big deal that we have like a room full of. How
did you find it? Is it like it was just in a storage somewhere and you were like, wait, I forgot about this?
It's, we have just so much stuff that it just kind of, that happens, we just find like some boxes of like an old cassette shell color that was like literally one called Old Computer that is sort of like a beige, like Apple II color. Every now and then we'll find another box and we're like, Old Computer's back.
Wait, so you're not even making this up? You literally just find a box randomly?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, like, it's known to happen. Like we're ordering cassette colors all the time because they're just flying off the shelf, and that's like such a big part of our day is just inventory management. But we've been around since 1989. We've been downtown Montreal, been in Nuns Island, we've been in Toronto proper, we're in Scarborough, we're like, we have so many different locations that sometimes a box, I don't know, just gets kicked in a corner or something.
When you guys are moving around from place to place like that, how big is the machinery that you're using to do this stuff? Man. So are you moving those things or what?
Yeah. It's like when I was rewatching 2001: A Space Odyssey a couple of years ago, and like the black monolith, and I was just thinking about our like Tape-matic tape loader machine. It's just like it towers over you. We have like, I think 6 of them currently working, maybe 8. If you've seen like supercomputers back in the 60s that like were like reel to reel data, like recording machines, they're kind of like that. And then you have like tape decks, which are just towers of tape decks, but those are like individual units, so they're a little bit less intimidating.
Is it as simple as like You know, when you have, say you have like a boombox at home and you have an A and a B and you can like write from A to B or whatever, is it as simple as like that exact technology just at scale? Is that what it is, or is it more complicated?
I mean, it kind of is that when it comes to the duplicating process. The tape loading process is a bunch of like, if you go on our Instagram, we have like videos of it. It's like reels that are spinning super quickly and it's loading each tape individually one by one. It's really rad. And then we have like a high speed loader that does that as it's recording at the same time. So that does it at like 64 times the speed. But when it comes to real time duplication, it is just like a master deck that's like, you know, chained to a bunch of other recording decks. It records A and B at the same time, like simultaneous recording for both sides. The audio is coming from a digital, you know, lossless file on the computer. So we're using like a digital software to play back the file, and then recordings through all the decks. And then it goes to printing and all that stuff. And that's a whole other army of machines that take up like, you know, so much square footage you wouldn't believe. Yeah.
And so does this all happen in one place, or is it sort of like we do the duplication in one area, then we ship it all to the printers who are in a different area?
No, it's all one warehouse for the most part. You know, the Ohio, like we don't have everything there yet. So some of that stuff gets shipped to Toronto, but like we can do everything in Toronto in the same warehouse. It's a massive warehouse. So you walk from one end to another. It takes you a few minutes, but yeah, it's all done in one place. It's all in-house.
It seems like a Disneyland type playground for anyone who's like a tech nerd, almost like a retro tech nerd, analog tech nerd who just like wants to see all this stuff happening. Do you remember like you mentioned how you tried to weasel your way in like early on in 2008 or whatever. Do you remember what it felt like when you walked in there and saw these things for the first time, or was it very different at that point?
It was very different. That was the Montreal office. Like, you know, like duplication has grown and grown. Like, so when they first started in 89, the early 90s, before they were even doing like, because we also do CD replication too. We do CD pressing and we do tons of print and stuff. So it's not just cassettes going on, but we're focusing on that as like our bread and butter, you know. But yeah, when I got the tour the first time, like there was like a room for duplication, and then there was like a tape loader, and it was just all kind of tucked away in the corner, and then just like shelves of inventory. It's like, it was very low key. It was also like, you know, 5 o'clock or something, so there wasn't much production going on. But in Toronto, like, and I imagine Ohio as well, it's like, it's all like, you know, it's just constant noise. It's printers, it's like tape whirring, it's like Frankie Teardrop. It's just like constant, like, so like there's not just something going on, there's like a lot going on, you know. Yeah. You
know what you guys need to do is record the sounds of the factory floor or whatever and release it as a special edition tape.
Yeah, that's a C10 noise tape right there. Yeah.
That would be it. Tell me a little bit about the team at duplication.com, because one, I imagine it's grown a lot since you started there, but I just think the types of people who gravitate towards working at a place like that are interesting. You know, it's like people who are into a very specific, you know, thing, like analog production almost. So yeah, tell me a bit about the team who you work with.
Yeah, so like in the Montreal office, like it was all just kind of like punks, cold wave, like noise people, yeah, some electronic musicians, you know, from almost like beginning to end of the production line. So like, yeah, we were going to each other's shows. Like people doing assembly were usually part-time temporary workers who would just disappear because they go on tour. So everybody there had like a real love for music and everything, and like supporting the scene. And that still continues in like the Toronto office, and I imagine Ohio too, that, you know, a lot of us run labels, a lot of us play shows. Yeah. And then like, you know, we have, George is, the president of the company, and he's like the real, like the tech head. And every new employee slowly like gains all this knowledge that they didn't think they'd ever have or have use for. And maybe outside of duplication.com, we'll never have use for it again. But yeah, it's a really great environment, especially like, so I do the social media like aspect for the company. And so I'm posting every day about a cassette. I just pull a random cassette out of like a box, listen to it, write a blurb. And it's just like, where else am I going to get this top down view of what's happening in like underground, like subterranean music, you know, like it's, I don't know, it's a privilege in that sense.
It sounds amazing. It's like you have the ultimate, it's like, you know, Willy Wonka chocolate factory type. You're just like in a place where you just love what's happening and you get to be there at its inception almost. And also the sample size of stuff you have to pick from is like way less daunting in a way. Like if you're digging through digital stuff, like whether that's on Spotify, on Bandcamp, whatever, the options are like limitless. Whereas here, you're like, here are the tangible cassettes. I'm going to pick one and just listen to it and we'll see what I get. We'll see what it is. It's interesting to me that you mentioned like everyone along the line is a musician, because I was going to ask about that. I feel like this is a section of the industry that like if you're going to get involved in it, you probably are already into music. You're not going to like just fall into this and do it as like an office job and then not care about music at all. Like you kind of have to. So, can you shout out some of the, whether it's like stuff that you've worked on or just projects that some of your coworkers or friends have? Can you shout out some of those folks just so people can maybe go listen to like what the duplication.com team is doing in their off hours?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like, so like like Ashley, who actually she's not with the company anymore, but she's working with Out of Season Records now, which are like a dungeon synth label. She's in a band called Puffer that just like are like, you know, darlings in Montreal now. Like they're just like, they're kind of garage rocky punk stuff. Like it is so good. The last record, I think called Street Hassle, is great. The EP's great. Chris and Shipping has the Metalhead Box label, which is awesome.
Well, then you're a musician yourself, right? I imagine.
Well, I actually do more video stuff than music, but I was doing music, you know, back then. And occasionally I'll just like plug stuff in and see what happens, but I'm not really releasing stuff as much. But I'm definitely involved in the world of like, you know, underground experimental.
Just a personal question. Does your filmmaking style sort of mirror your music style, I guess, your taste? Like you mentioned noise a lot. You mentioned like scuzzy punk underground stuff. Does your filmmaking aesthetic sort of fall in line with that?
Yeah, well, like I do experimental like video glitch. So a lot of like open VCRs and pulling on tape and like circuit bent video processors and video synthesis. So definitely noisy looking, weird looking, warbly. So yeah, it's like I find that when I'm trying to, sometimes what I'm trying to do more than anything is make something look sorry, how do I say this? I'm trying to make something look the way that something else sounds. So, you know, I did a piece that was kind of like, I was just listening to a ton of the Dead Sea, and I just like, I want video to look like the Dead Sea, stuff like that.
That is very, very interesting. I'm a film person as well. So like to me, that is so interesting because that is so far. I think you and I both like are both, when it comes to music and film, we're in totally different spheres, which we'll get to in the mixtape. I didn't know a single thing about this, so I'm very excited to learn about it. But with film as well, like it seems like you make art, and I'd like to make like commerce. I don't know, whatever. Like I like to make like, you know, my dream project, if I had like an unlimited budget, is to make like a Survivor style reality show. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And like yours is make art. So I respect it. I think it's fucking awesome.
Well, likewise.
Real quick, before we go to the first break, tell me a little bit about some of your favorite projects that you've worked on when it comes to, you know, duplication.com and like being a piece of the puzzle for any big projects you guys have, you know, had come through there.
Sure. I mean, like, what record was it? Magic by One Tricks Point Never. Like to get that order and like hear it like a good 4 months, and just like obviously like we have like not just NDAs but like ethics, and we don't talk about stuff. We don't like and just to like be sitting on that and just like be at home and just like listen to it over and over again. I love that record so much. I mean, I think One Tricks Point Never is like an incredible artist, and he's kind of like, what if you're living through the time of Tangerine Dream and like Cluster and stuff like that? Like we're getting it now, like we have it. So I think that's like one that really sticks out for me. Just getting, whenever I get like an order by Death's Dynamic Shroud, I'm always excited. Like, and they have their mixtape club, so we get orders from them fairly often, and just like so. For the Instagram posts and for the social media posts, because I work remotely, every now and then I just get a box of random samples. So I have no choice in it. And that's works to my benefit because I just pull a random tape that, wasn't even curated for me or anything. So I get to listen. So I have to listen to stuff I maybe might skip over otherwise. And turns out I love it. But yeah, like, so like there's artists that I know and love, like Lil Ugly Mane, but then there's stuff like that I just, just surprises me. And it's like an edition of 30, and I will rep it. I will tell my friends about it. I'll tell our followers about it. And who knows if they'll ever like, if it goes anywhere for them, but they have an incredible artifact that I feel like, I was there for it and I can appreciate it, for eternity now.
Yeah, that's an amazing way to put it, because that's really what it is. It is like a little artifact, a little token of, something, I don't know. But it's the same with ours. Like when we make our tapes, they're runs of 30, and it's just like, yeah, I don't know, they might not mean much to most people, but the people who get them, hopefully they like them, you know what I mean? So, and also great strategy for you guys. That I think that's such a cool strategy to have, like, for y'all to highlight a tape that you've worked on, no matter the size of it. That's the key, because I think like if you just highlight all the big artists, it kind of is a turnoff to the little artists, so.
For sure. I've received a lot of feedback from people who are just happy. It's hard to like get any writing about your work, right? Like you send it to a bunch of blogs or whatever, and like, blogs aren't even I don't know how many blogs there are that you can send stuff to anymore. Back in the early 2010s, you had your pick of the litter, but like, and even then that was difficult. But just to make no effort, and then suddenly it's just, you're tagged in a post, and, I'm not writing reviews, or it's not music criticism or anything. It's just like my impressions after a listen. But
which is just as valid as any criticism these days, to be honest. I mean, like, it's the truth. Like, you can listen to music anywhere for basically free. So in that way, everyone's opinion's sort of valid, I guess. I don't know. That's a bigger philosophical debate or whatever.
Yeah, but I'm not like trying to give an opinion in these posts. I'm just trying to highlight, like, this is what it sounds like. And if this appeals to you, like, give it a listen or purchase the cassette. Like, I always put the purchase link and everything. Hopefully it's not sold out by that point, but, yeah. And so people appreciate that that it kind of comes out of nowhere, and there's just some recognition for the work that they put in, even if it's just 25 pieces. And sometimes it's 500 pieces, and sometimes it's like 5,000 pieces. We duplicate 30 orders a day, like that range anywhere between 30 pieces and 15,000 pieces. So
if you're one of those artists who makes like 25 pieces, it must be so crazy to wake up and see that you got tagged in like Duplication's post about you. So it's awesome. I really think it's a very cool strategy. I like it a lot.
Cool,
let's do this. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we will talk about your mixtape. All right, we are back with the mixtape. And Rob, tell me, you alluded to it a little bit at the beginning, but why don't you give me an idea of what the theme, what the thesis was, what was going on here when you made this mixtape?
Yeah, so basically, I just kind of wanted to highlight stuff that I consider to be tape music. Now, like, of course, any music can be tape music, but there's just some things that are just like, it just works so well that this is on tape, that this is on like an analog format. There's some exceptions to that rule. Like, I kind of bend it a little bit, but, mixtape themes can be bent. That's fine. So.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. The mixtape theme is tapes. It's hiss, it's fuzz, it's all of the above. And the first track is, it's a song called Well, the artist is Deadbush, and the track title here is Side A, but is this just the side of a tape?
It's just a side of a tape. Yeah, this classic noise junk stuff. Like, so this is the reason I included this one is that it's what got me back into cassettes. So like I was 17 years old, going to like school, like downtown, going to CJEP and like exploring and going to shows. Just kind of getting into like the Montreal underground stuff. And there was this noise band named Deadbush, which is so indicative of what music was in 2005, that it was like everything is George Bush related, even in Montreal. And they were just a little bit more like audacious about it, you know? But yeah, so they're like kind of like this like noise band that was like kind of like had like a junkyard feel to them, a lot of percussion and stuff. And I thought I never heard music like that. And I went up to the merch table and they had a cassette, and I have it here somewhere. It's like really worn out looking. But what the label did, this is a label called Pink Triforce, is that they painted the cassette case with a material that you could write on with chalk. So it came with a piece of chalk, which I lost. And then you can draw your own cover, but the Deadbush is there permanently. So I just thought that was like, I've never seen something so DIY. I've never heard something so DIY. And just like that really opened cassettes back up for me. I never like, I used cassettes way late into life until like, you know, got the iPod in like 2004. And then I was just so ready to jump back into cassettes when I saw this tape. So I used to play this one all the time. I just wanted to give a shout out to that band. That really kind of put me on a trajectory.
It's so interesting to see the innovative packaging for like such a small thing, I guess. Because this was a short run thing, I imagine. You can't really make too many of these, can you?
20 copies, 25 copies, maybe. Yeah. Like, and that's when we were talking about the tape stuff in Montreal, like that and like CDRs beautifully, like, or not, maybe not beautifully, but like kind of like sometimes crudely packaged CDRs, but might have like some knitting involved, or like, you know, just like everything felt like it was homemade at somebody's like somebody's coffee table.
I love it. Maybe that's some inspiration for the Tape Club. Maybe we'll have to do some more creative packaging like that. I got my gears turning already. One thing that you did, I'll just say that this goes for the entire mixtape. You gave me this great list of the artist, the track title, the album title, the label, the year. You sent a WeTransfer link, like model student type shit over here.
Oh, I'm such an Excel sheet organized dude. Yeah.
Well, what I love about it is it helps me come up with a question here. The label that put this out is called Pink Triforce Records. You mentioned Montreal being like a video game kind of place where there's a lot of stuff. Triforce is a video game reference. What is Pink Triforce Records? Do you know anything about this label? It's okay if you don't, but
no, I do. It's run by a dude named Brian Seeger, who's still around Montreal and stuff like that. I saw him play a show recently, or play a set. They just did like a lot of cool DIY stuff. They did like there was like an AIDS Wolf tape that they put out. Maybe that was a CDR. No, that was a tape. Yeah. What else?
Was the overlap between like the video game scene and the music scene? How was it there? Was it like the Venn diagram?
No.
Really?
Like
no, not at all, huh?
I was working with like in those video game testing labs, like there was like one person I met with with a good taste in music, frankly. But no, there wasn't much overlap. I think like maybe like some of the programmers and stuff might have been doing like Max MSP, like jitter stuff. Like I think there could be some overlap there, like with more kind of like the Mutech festival crowd. Which is kind of like a deconstructed techno, experimental, like ambient festival. But for the most part, I wouldn't really say so, no.
Yeah, well, I had to ask because Triforce made me think of it. But good to know. Good to know that they're separate worlds. You know, maybe it's better that way.
I think everybody at that time still enjoyed like just playing their Super Nintendo and stuff like that. So I think that's like probably where that comes from, is just getting drunk and playing Donkey Kong Country all night. But not so much video game programming.
You gotta love it. I love that rhinoceros they would ride around on. Okay, let's listen to a little bit of Side A by Deadbush. Next up, we have Lil Noid with a song called Death Row. So tell me a bit about this.
This is something that a friend of mine once called real tape music. And that's a phrase that always it never left my head. And I've never heard anything truer than that. It's distorted, it's grimy, it takes all the things that when people say they still make cassettes, why would you want an inferior format? I will say that the tape type that we use sounds great. It sounds on par with 90s cassette releases. And it's just there is a good amount of fidelity and dynamics in it. But if you have an old worn out tape, it has character. And this song has that character. It has that dirtiness to it. It was left outside in the sun for a summer, and then you popped it in, and this is what it sounds like now. And you're like, oh, this is better. This is so much better than clean production.
It's highlighting the imperfections and turning them into focal points, I guess, in a way. It's the name of the album too, Paranoid Funk. It is perfect. It sort of really highlights that. It feels it's Paranoid Funk is a really weird sensation to think about, Well, it's we get a lot of funk, PHONK, Memphis style, hip hop orders, and this is definitely that southern rap style. I think, is he Memphis? I think he might be Memphis. But it is kind of that horrorcore sound is. Yeah, Paranoid Funk. That's what it is, you just I was gonna say horrorcore. It makes you feel shit. Let's put it like that. Because that's how you judge. I mean, to me, it's how you judge art. How much of an emotion does it evoke? If it doesn't matter what that emotion is, it can be you might want to just turn it off because it's how I feel about Death Grips, right? It's Death Grips, I can't say I'm the hugest fan of Death Grips, but I really like them because they make me viscerally be okay, I can't sometimes. You know what I mean? That's cool. That's art. It's a statement. They're doing something. It's better than just me playing major seventh chords over and over again. You know what I'm saying? So it's whatever. It's art to me. Let's listen to a little bit of it. Here's Death Row by Lil Noid. To the electric chair, thinking of all the stuff I did, cause I know I gotta go. Case was in the wake of sleep, cause I'm on that death row. Next up, we got Nmesh with Avon NiteMare Liquid Mascara. So tell me a bit about this selection.
So this is something I included because vaporwave is the first genre I noticed come out of the cassette renaissance culture. Mid 2010s to, early 2020s. And it obviously extends past that, but that's when it was really popping off. And it's something that I don't think would have existed outside of tape culture. If we didn't have this return to this format where people were kind of, going beyond you hear the term nostalgia used for cassettes a lot, which is fine because there is some aspect of that, but that doesn't mean that that's all it is. Nostalgia, you do have celebrations for its values and the rediscovery of those values and where they fit in a modern capitalist society. It's all explored in vaporwave, and it's use of plunderphonics and sampling and slowed down music. This is just one of a million great tracks to come out of the vaporwave scene. But yeah, that's kind of why I included it.
Now, do you remember the first time? It doesn't have to be this exact track or whatever, but do you remember the first time you heard Nmesh or anything kind of like that?
Yeah, it was at work. It was me mastering this tape, and it was it blew me away. It was a double album. Dream Sequence and I forget what the other album's called. But anyway, it was every single song was so fun because it's full of these 80s commercial samples that I vaguely remember from a VHS tape I would watch as a kid. And even just obvious stuff How Soon Is Now by the Smiths or something, that a chord that I could go my whole life without hearing again. But the way that it's sampled and approached by Nmesh was just delightful. I think it's like the best way I can put it. And it's just a good album. It's like, it's a head bopper. It says a lot. It's, that is, you're asking before about standouts, like sitting in that chair with my headphones on, kind of skipping through the album, trying to find peaks and everything, doing all the mastering and stuff. I was like, oh, I can't wait to hear this whole thing.
Because that's what I was going to ask about the mastering is like, if it's something so innovative and something that makes you like, makes your ears perk up and listen, is it more difficult to master something like that? Or because like,
it's more time consuming. Yeah. Cause it's like, you just start listening to the whole thing. Like, the mastering, like for us, like, we receive mastered files, but the audio cassette mastering is just kind of to make sure that it's not going to distort on cassette, that there's not going to be like a peak that's like, 12 dB louder than everything else. And we record to the highest peak. So like, we don't want anything to distort. So we're just looking out for stuff like that. Or just like if there's a frequency range, something in like the 16 kilohertz range, that's like just above everything. Like those are the things that we might have to roll off or, talk to the client and everything. When it's something you like, I have to treat everything equally. I can't just be like dismissing one album and then like spending a bunch of time for the other. But that just means like, I'm going back to this. I'm remembering this name. I'm writing this down. And when I get home, I'll listen to it, or like during my lunch break or something. Like, yeah.
Hell yeah. I'm getting too in the weeds about this, but I'm genuinely curious. If some artist sends over like something that is purposely just like cranked, like brick walled, like through the fucking roof, just going nuts with distortion, purposely, like an artistic thing.
Yeah.
Do you guys just, you allow it? I mean, do you still hit them up and go, hey, just so you know, like this shit is like really, clipping crazy, and they're like, oh, it's a decision. Then do you just do it?
Yeah. We'll let them know for sure. Like we don't want to take risks with people's music, for their sake and for our sake. But yeah, we let them know. And then often we've had this before. Bob Bell Rue in New York, I believe that's his name. He runs End Times Fest. It's like a noise festival. I remember like his was like, I've never received such a loud master in my life. And then I think I spoke to him once and I mentioned that, and he was like, what a badge of honor. Like,
that's hilarious. I feel like it's interesting. I never really thought about like pushing the limits of an analog thing. Whereas, because digital, it's like, it goes to a limit and then it stops. And yes, you can keep pushing it. It's just going to be digital artifacting, but with analog stuff, maybe it artifacts differently. Maybe it sounds cool. And maybe that's the whole idea of noise, and I'm starting to kind of understand it. Who the fuck knows? Either way, let's listen to a little bit of Nmesh, ΛVΘN NiteMare Liquid Mascara. Next up, New Mexican Stargazers with the song called Lamentation, Fragrant, Repel. Tell me a bit about this one.
Yeah, I have this one here too. It's a cool double cassette set. So this one, the reason I included it is like, first of all, I just love the album. I love this song. I know I sent you like a 40-minute song, so you're going to have a hell of a time trying to just find like the
okay, so that's what I wanted to ask about, because I didn't write down the runtime. So is this the 42-minute one?
Yeah.
Oh jeez. Okay, well, so explain that. Why is it just because it's one side of a tape, basically?
I think there actually might be 2 tracks on that side, but it's just like, it's indicative of what is maybe like my favorite thing that, movement I've been witness to, a part of, and the audience of, is in Montreal. Just like we had a really great experimental kind of drone tape scene. And that's when I got into making cassettes myself. Like, so many of my friends had tape labels, and there was just this kind of attitude of you yourself, or you and a friend, you just get together in a jam space, you hold down keys, you on your keyboard, on your synth, and that's a C20 right there. I think New Mexican Stargazers, they kind of like he's a little bit more elevated with it. But it does have that lo-fi droney atmosphere that I miss so much from music, and I hear it every now and then. And I heard it in this, and this is really one of my favorite cassettes that we've ever done. I rep it all the time.
Is it the kind of thing where, again, because I don't actually listen to music that's like this at all, really, in sound or in form or anything. Mm-hmm. So if it's 42 minutes long, it's the same as listening to an album, kind of, right? Where like you're not going to just listen to a chunk of this song. You're going to like, if you're in it for the long run. Like you put it on when you have an hour-long task ahead of you that you need to like be locked in on, I imagine. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's, you know, it's meditative music, so it just kind of goes into the background. I mean, hence the term ambient. You know, you could abandon it halfway through. You're probably not going to be like, where did I leave off in that song? You sort of get a sense of where it's going because it's been there for a while. But this song does grow, and it just kind of like, you know, it has this, maybe it's not that track. There's somewhere in the album has this kind of like a Terminator drum beat, like, and so it should be menacing, but you know, all the artwork is like beautiful waterfalls and flowers and stuff like that. And there's a nice piano chord and everything. Very melodic, but also has this kind of like, doomy sense to it.
I love it. I mean, it's gonna be this will by far be the longest mixtape that we've made. We don't like put these out physically, but we put them out on the paid subscription, you know, so people can hear the mixtape in full.
Oh, right, because I do have another quite long track.
And that's the next one. We'll get to it, but let's start with this. New Mexican Stargazers. Here's a little bit of Lamentation, Fragrant, Repel. Next up, we have the Dead Sea, that's the letter C, with a song called Outside. This is another one of the longer ones, right?
20 minutes.
Yeah, so tell me a bit about this one. This one, though, look, I'm using your spreadsheet that you gave me. The New Mexican Stargazers one was pretty recent, last year, 2025. The Dead Sea one is from 1995, so 30 years earlier. They were making this long-form stuff. Tell me a bit about Outside and about the Dead Sea.
So the Dead Sea are like a New Zealand kind of experimental noisy band, outsider punk. And the reason that I included it is that they have like an ethos to their recording that I get behind, and it works so well with cassettes that it's really just plug in and play. It's experimentation, it's exploration, and all the empty space that comes with it is not something that's removed from the recording. If there's like a few minutes of humming, that's part of the album, and it really does build an atmosphere. So this album was on Silk Breeze, which I think is a Philly label. And they had like a run of stuff in the 90s that was on that label. And one of them is like dubbed, a live album. Was it Climat et Mort? Something like that. And it's only a live album because there was somebody else in the room. Like, like it wasn't in front of it was in front of an audience of one, but it's just like they had a witness to it. So it's a live album, but it's just, I love Freeform, and I just love the way that they use analog, recording, techniques. And it just, again, like Lil Noid, very similar, gives it a lot of character, a lot of texture. I really like music with texture. I think that's like more than lyrics for me, more than melody is texture. So yeah, Dead Sea delivered. This is like their poppiest song. This is like kind of their, like more like aligned with Sonic Youth than they are with the Dead Sea. I just thought that I can't just fill it with like experimental jams. I mean, it does go into it. Like if you listen to it, like the song falls apart after 5 minutes, and then the rest is just kind of light strumming and feedback. But there is a song in there.
Yeah, it's approachable.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It gets me thinking, like, so you mentioned that they're kind of just, they start recording, and then when they're out of tape or whatever, that's like the performance and that's the tape. I guess there's not really a straight answer to this, but with the Dead Sea specifically, Does it ever sound like it is maybe rehearsed stuff where they like there's a set list, so to speak, going into it, or is it just sort of like they start and it's very free?
Well, I should mention that they're not even a tape band. I mean, like they do have some like early cassette releases in like the late 80s. But they're an LP CD band. But this song, yeah, for sure, this is like a rehearsed record, like, you know, like written song. They do have lyrics and stuff like that. And then there's other stuff that are just a little bit more open. Some stuff, you know, some tracks can be 40 minutes, some tracks can be 5 minutes. And so there's just like excerpts of things. Their albums and songs just tend to end like, and it's just like, we'll just stop it there. We'll just cut there.
It's pretty cool. It's a cool statement. Let's listen to a little bit of it. Here is Outside by The Dead Sea. And then the closer, the last track, it's Hole Dweller. The song is called Through the Bindbole Wood. Bindbole?
Oh, I'm not too sure. Something Tolkien-esque for sure.
Yeah, it is very Tolkien-esque. But tell me a bit about this one. Why'd you put this one as the closer?
I wanted some representation of what's happening with Dungeon Synth, which is another movement, like microgenre. I think it's a little bigger than a microgenre now. It's clearly its own thing that I think has really come out of the tape scene. And basically, it's like, if you have like a Tolkien interlude to a black metal album, and that's what it is. Like artists that like, you know, just kind of, it's really fantasy synth. It is about dragons and knights and hobbits, and there's so many different subgenres of it. I gravitate towards the ones that sound like JRPG, like village music. This one is more on like the Tolkien level. So it's like a little bit bouncy. There's a lot of like, Baroque aspects to it. We've gone to a couple of, Dungeon Synth festivals, like representing Duplication.com. So like, which kind of feels like summer camp. They're just, everybody there is so friendly. Like all the labels, all the artists, they're just really down to earth. And they're just like so sincere about with their love for the music. And then they're also in like, half of them are in like raw black metal bands too. So like they kind of have like a tough, scary side, and this is like their soft, nice side. But they're all nice people.
I feel like a lot of I'm going back to my experience growing up. Like all the metalheads and all those folks were always the nicest people. It was like
soft spoken. Yeah.
Yeah. You always like. They'd be scary looking, and then you talk to them and you're like, oh, they're like super friendly and like really nice and like accepting and just awesome. So there you go. Yeah. Shout out. Let's listen to a little bit of it. Here's Hole Dweller with Through the Bindbole Wood. And finally, the honorable mentions. This is the part of the show that usually catches everyone off guard, but I gave you some heads up. So who you got? Any honorable mentions?
Well, I mean, I don't really have any specific honorable mentions. Making this mixtape was obviously like the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, because you have to like limit it to 6 songs, right? And I'm here representing Duplication.com, but also music is so personal to me that how can I not make this like my mixtape in the realm of Duplication.com. So I just wanted to say that, like, you know, we get so many great orders that are just like emo bands, like Spirit Desire is one that like, from Toronto that I heard a few years ago, we received a copy, and it's just like, oh, so good. Like we're getting so many shoegaze orders that are awesome. And even like legacy shoegaze acts, like, American Football and stuff like that. Like, a lot of great indie rock. Being Dead is a band that I heard through, a cassette sample that I received, and also heard them on the Best Show, and just like, oh, they're fantastic. A lot of great lo-fi beats, a lot of hip hop. Just like we work with so many different labels of like so many different sizes that it's not just all my noisy tastes, you know. It's actually very rarely my noisy tastes.
Yeah. I mean, hey, you know what? That's you had a theme though, and you needed to stay within the theme. So I'm sure all the honorable mentions, they get it. They know that next time maybe there'll be a different theme. Maybe they'll fit into that one. But for now, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to play a game, and then we will get the hell on out of here. We're back with the game, and today we're playing a fun little game called Call and Response. Rob, this is basically where I'll give you a word, and then you will give me some ideas on what that word makes you think of and what your thoughts are generally on the topic. So the first word we're going to start with, you're a social media guy. The first word is metrics. So what does that inspire? What does that make you think of? What's your attitude towards metrics?
It kind of brings to mind immediately Spotify and that attitude towards music production, music distribution, which is, I'm speaking for myself and not so much like duplication.com but every day I just want to speak out against it, I think, you should be doing things for yourself and not necessarily for what your audience wants, or not what you think your audience may want and how they might digest it. In terms of like track lengths, track numbers, obviously track lengths, like I like a longer 40-minute song. That's not really, Spotify friendly. They want you to have an EP every 3 months. That's 16 tracks. So you can just get an ad break in between them. That's metrics. When we talk about cassette, the rise of cassettes, cassette renaissance, you always get these articles that are talking about Guardians of the Galaxy and how many copies that sold. And all those numbers don't matter because this is all happening on merch tables and Bandcamp. That's where the real cassette renaissance is going on. Those numbers aren't reported. It's just kind of a cultural feel. And I don't think metrics really works in with that.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's like a soft qualitative measure. It's like, is the culture being buoyed and kind of making progress? I guess if you're in the right rooms, it is. Next word is sort of related to this. The word is technology. What does that make you think of, the future maybe of these things?
Well, I mean, we've seen that technology can be cyclical. Like the things I gave away all my CDs years ago. And I'm thinking, damn, I really want those CDs back. Because I think every piece, every physical media format has its place. For me, listening to records, I buy a ton of records. That's when I'm in the living room. I'm either reading or I have friends over and I'll put on album sides. When I'm puttering around the house, that's when I listen to tapes. I crank it up. When I'm outside the house, that's when I'm using my own, MP3 server, my private server. I'm streaming from that. So I think technology is never antiquated. It's never really useless. It just depends on your use case. You just might not have a use case for that. I was talking to a friend the other night and I was telling him that DVDs don't do it for me because Blu-rays are also discs and they just look a million times better. But he has his use case for DVDs. He has his appreciation for them. And so just be nice to all formats of technology. They have their spot, they have their role.
That's such a great positive outlook on it. Because, like you said, the fact that they're not outdated, they just, have their own place. I'd never thought of it that way. That's really interesting. I'm going to start reframing my idea of these antiquated things. I say this with a bunch of tapes behind me, but I mean, really, I will start, rethinking it. And that kind of leads me into the next word. The last word for our call and response is cassettes. It's kind of a big picture, but, what do you think?
For me, it means work because it's my everyday, right? But no, I mean, I still get excited when I see a pile of cassettes. I'm at a thrift store at a friend's place. If I were where you're recording right now, the moment you have your back turned, I'd be looking at all your tapes to see, what you're listening to. And I'd be opening it up to check out the J cards and stuff like that. I think cassettes are a great medium of expression and one that's so low risk for artists. You can order 100 tapes for like probably like $400 with like print and packaging and everything. It's not like, you know, record pressing has its place too. It depends on like where you are with your band or your project, but you're not going to be, you know, in the red for $10,000 or something like that. You're going to have, you know, it's just like, it's just an easy form of distribution. It's recession proof too. Like it's like when I was talking about the drone scene in like the 2008, I think the big reason that kind of popped off was that there was a recession going on. So nobody was releasing vinyl. Like, none of these small groups were putting out records. Like CDs were kind of, in a low point there. So I think cassettes came back because they were cheap for us to buy, cheap for us to record. Everybody's touring in vans that only has a working tape deck and nothing else. It made sense for the moment, and then it just kind of got bigger from there.
Yeah, it's always going to have its utility. You know what I mean? It kind of goes back to what you said about technology not growing outdated, but maybe finding a different utility. Rob, I really appreciate you coming on the show. This was so much fun. I learned a ton about noise stuff and really just about cassettes in general. And I'm walking away from this one inspired as hell. Why don't you tell the listeners and the viewers where they can find you and duplication.com and what's coming up, what you got going on? And I would say keep in mind that this is supposed to come out May 14th. So if there's any date things, angle it towards May 14th. Okay.
No, there's no big date things. We just, you can find us at duplication.com. That's the name is the website. And that's, you know, you can get an instant quote on cassettes there. All you have to do is put in the info of like what you want in terms of like J cards, packaging. We have a bunch of photos. You can just spend time on that little calculator. It'll give you like an instant price. You can get a sense of like what you need for your band or your project. And, we also do CD pressing. We work with vinyl pressing, print, everything you need for like your home collection, blank tapes, replacement cassette cases, stuff like that. We have on our online store as well.
Amazing. I love it. And, you know, we use it over here at the Tape Club. We use duplication.com. And actually, that leads me nicely into my little spiel. Here's an example for the viewers. Listeners, you're just going to hear some rattling, I guess. But the Rue Defense Tape Club, this was the March 2026 tape that we put out. The next one's coming in June. So at this point, here's a little peek behind the curtain. While we're recording this is kind of like the last week to get submissions in if you're an artist. When you're hearing this, these tapes will probably have come back to us by now, and I'll be getting them packaged up and stuff. But here's an example of what the last one looked like. It's a little purple one, you know, we kind of did our thing. So always love that. If you all want to support, you can do so at tapeclub.substack.com. That's where you can sign up for the mailers, or you can just sign up for free and get the podcast and the newsletter. Rob, thanks again for doing this. I really appreciate it. I want to give a big shout out to associate producer Olivia Stonier and our booker, Jamie Halliday. I usually say Jamie helps with booking because calling Jamie a booker sounds weird because Jamie does so much more than booking. But shout out Jamie. And shout out to you, the listener and the viewer, for listening and viewing. I will see you next time. Peace.
Thanks a lot, man.
The J-Card podcast is a fully independent production. It is made possible by listeners and viewers just like you. So if you want to support us, tapeclub.substack.com is the place to go.